history of the Caribbean is complex, with colonialism being its defining feature. The main instruments of colonialism were exploitation and manipulation. The Caribbean society was formed by mixing persons from different societies and cultures. Having imported these groups to the Caribbean, the colonists stratified the society by sowing seeds of mistrust and hatred in the hybridized society because unity amongst the races was a threat to their Forde.
In the post-emancipation times, there was an animosity between the Indians and Africans. The influx of Indians caused a decrease in the price of labor since they accepted the low wages were preferred on the plantations over the former enslaved and therefore took the available jobs. This gave rise to the us versus them syndrome that permeates our society. For example, in Barbados 2010, former Prime Minister David Thompson advocated an anti-immigration stance. The amnesty law, specifically against Guyanese who sought employment in Barbados, he impeded them via deportation, limited work permits, and citizenship.
Haiti is considered the black sheep of the Caribbean, thus another consequence of the Europeans' machination. Haiti has very little influence from the Europeans. Essentially, Haiti's ethnicity is entirely West African, which meant they kept practices such as obeah, a religion. The Europeans described obeah as dark magic, supernatural, or evil in nature, as it made them uneasy. The success of the Haitian Revolution caused other islands to look up to Haiti. However, due to disastrous events, islands have turned their backs on Haiti. This intolerance has bled into our modern society, where Caribbean people refuse to trust and discriminate against Haitians. It has been melded into our psyche to think of them as thieves and insubordinate. An example would be the treatment of the Haitians who lived on Grand Abacol Island, Bahamas. After Dorian struck, the Haitians, although having been citizens for years, were denied emergency aid, shelter, and health care, and have been denied occupation after losing everything. Additionally, having lost everything, including documentation, they were deported if they failed to supply documents. Some Haitians who were born and raised in the Bahamas are being deported to a country they know nothing about, whilst families are being divided.
After emancipation, Caribbean states discovered it was advantageous to integrate some parts of their operations to better counter the free market ideology. The first attempt was the West Indies Federation in 1958 to 1962 amongst the British colonies. However, the Federation suffered due to inadequate funding and estrangement amongst the colonies. Namely, the leaders were afraid that the free movement would invite poor persons and criminals, which affects the standard of living. Integration is a tool for political independence, which has led Caribbean nations to be exceedingly protective of their sovereignty rights. We generally show little interest in or appreciation of the different cultures observed in the other Caribbean countries, and unfortunate togetherness is usually seen under the influence of external forces, natural, economic, or otherwise, leading to a sense of mistrust and unwelcomeness, sometimes shown by Caribbean people to one another. Examples include Venezuelan boats being denied entry, as narrated by the Trinidad and Tobago newspaper, The Guardian.
CARICOM for many years has a level of distrust and contempt of other nations. This distrust and contempt have prevented the region from moving forward and developing together. Some of the major factors that play into this include corruption and the fallout from the West Indies Federation, which ended in 1962. Politics in the region has its ups and downs, with some nations facing several corruption scandals with politicians and some of the nation's businessmen and women. This corruption destabilizes the nation itself and leaves a negative impression of that nation. It is well documented that corruption, the abuse of public office for private gain, robs citizens' expectations for improvements in service deliveries, undermines trust in public institutions, particularly in the judiciary and security forces, and hinders investments by increasing the cost of doing business and distrust in investment security. These are clear correlations between corruption levels and a country or region's degrees of social, economic, and political development. When corruption is made public, it deters other nations from making trade deals with such nations, creating political friction. These scandals give a negative impression of that nation and its people, which creates distrust and contempt globally.
The West Indies Federation was an attempt to form a union between Antigua and Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago, Dominica, Grenada, Jamaica, Montserrat, and other islands, becoming a political power to achieve independence from Britain. The failure of the union and the reasons behind it left a lasting sense of distrust and contempt between nations. Some of the major factors that led to the union's failure include politicians all vying for power within the union, which led to tensions between leaders and the people of the nations, and Jamaica pulling out of the union because of several reasons. Jamaicans have a strong nationalism and were upset that their capital, Kingston, was not chosen as the capital of the Federation. Jamaica had the largest population of the nations involved but did not hold enough seats of power equivalent to it. Jamaica provided the most economic value and income to the Federation, and its people believed that other nations were draining its resources, and with other minor nations outside the Federation gaining independence, then Jamaica could gain independence likewise.
According to the Encyclopedia Britannica, social mobility is the movement of individuals, families, or groups through a system of social hierarchy or stratification. In the Caribbean, during colonialism, persons of African descent had difficulty occupying higher positions of power compared to the white upper class. In Barbados, one could not vote unless they earned a certain amount of money, meaning only the wealthy of the country, that is the planter class, could vote and be involved in politics until 1951. In the Caribbean today, ease of social mobility depends on how well educated an individual is. Rex Nettleford, a Jamaican and Vice-Chancellor Emeritus of the University of the West Indies, states, "Knowledge is arguably replacing physical capital as a source of future wealth, and higher education now constitutes as a primary source driving the sustainability of development. An undergraduate degree impacts positively on life experiences of its holder. It raises wages, productivity, as well as enhancing the quality of civil society, and graduates earn more than non-graduates, particularly in the medium to long term." Nettleford further states, "The potential for development in the CARICOM community is, however, at risk of being substantially reduced by info poverty, amongst other factors."
This is in part to education contributing to the reduction of the poverty cycle. Education allows a person to gain knowledge and achieve higher paying and more stable jobs. It allows them to have the day-to-day knowledge necessary to apply to life and inspires young persons to achieve higher education. This is seen in Middle Eastern and North African countries, where studies show that the poverty rates are highest for households headed by illiterate people. In the Caribbean, this can be seen in Haiti, which according to the United Nations, only 50% of students successfully reach 6th grade, and 58% of people in Haiti live in poverty. Social mobility in the Caribbean is something that varies island to island, depending on the ability to educate the populace.
Intolerances in the Caribbean are usually a result of a person's misconception of another culture. A thought process that is perpetuated by the argument, "You can only understand a culture if you are born into it."
Thank you.